You want to know what I did to get in here? Nothing. I didn't have anything better to do.
Surely, The Breakfast Club owes much of its long-standing popularity to its cast of unique and memorable characters. The 5 students stuck in Saturday morning detention are expertly written, perfectly cast, and manage to complement one another beautifully. The popular rich girl, pressured into conforming with the standards set by her family's wealth, the jock with a father who sets enormous expectations for him, the nerd with overbearing parents who pressure him to perform flawlessly academically, the bad boy who puts on a tough guy persona only to mask the hurt he feels from his abusive father, and the shy, almost non-existent goth girl who spends much of the film tucked away from the rest of the group, afraid to exist at all because she doesn't exist to her parents. Even though they fight and bicker and seem to have nothing in common, they can't help but notice just how similar they all really are. Despite representing 5 very different cliques and lifestyles, there is one common thread joining all of these kids together in mutual understanding. Childhood can be very hard.
When you grow up, your heart dies.
Who cares?
I care.
Now, I know why you clicked on this video. You wanted to hear about Allison. But before I can properly begin to dissect The Breakfast Club's most complex character, we need to look at how our society defines child abuse. Because this film, through the character of Allison, works to broaden this definition beyond what most people are comfortable with. I think it can be said that The Breakfast Club, through its motley crew of kids, showcases that there is no one way to abuse a child. These 5 kids from 5 wildly different families are all nonetheless hurt and confused in their own unique ways. It is true that only one of them is outright physically abused, yet he's not the only one with abusive parents.
You know what I got for Christmas this year? It was a banner fucking year at the old Bender family. I got a carton of cigarettes. The old man grabbed me and said, "Hey, smoke up, Johnny." Okay, so go home and cry to your daddy. Don't cry here, okay?
As a society, our definition of child abuse is quite narrow. We hear the word abuse and envision a towering, drunk father whipping his cowering child with a belt buckle while the mother stands aside doing nothing. If anybody saw this in public, they'd rush to the defense of the child and put a stop to the father's insane violence. Yet, while everyone can equally agree on the evil of that, not everyone is in agreement that spanking is abuse. People are actually quite unlikely to do anything about spanking if it occurs in public. That's not abuse to most people, but typical parenting. I say all this to showcase how narrow society's definitions are. There are very, very few circumstances which would be described as child abuse by the average person. These circumstances include outright physical beatings that cause bruises and bleeding, screaming, and of course, everyone agrees that intimate physical violations are abuse. But there are far more ways to hurt a child, ways that society doesn't agree is abuse. The character Bender from The Breakfast Club is a standard example of the abused child whom society largely recognizes as abused. He has parents who mock him, call him useless, and outright beat him. He shows Andrew a scar on his arm from the time his father burned him with a lit cigar, and this is the kind of moment which I'm sure still brings out utter shock from audiences. Our culture is at least willing to acknowledge that burning your son with a cigar is abusive. If you met a person like Bender in real life and heard his story, you would absolutely say he was abused, no question about it. But The Breakfast Club is a special film amongst 1980s coming-of-age stories because it doesn't stop its definitions of child abuse there. What's genius about the film is that it gives average audiences a character who is abused as they understand abuse to be, but only as a way of luring the audience in. By giving them Bender as a softball, the film lets them know this is a movie about troubled children with troubled homes, and audiences might expect to hear similar such stories from the other kids. But Bender, at the end of the day, is the only one among them who was explicitly beaten and tortured. Now, as I said, our society's definitions of child abuse don't exactly extend beyond cases like Bender's, but the Breakfast Club pushed the boundaries of what society was willing to label abuse. Yes, it does include an example that everyone universally can agree is abuse, but Bender, despite having seemingly the most horrid home life, is actually far from the worst case among them.
My home life is unsatisfying.
Allison is the Breakfast Club's loudest statement, which feels odd to say considering she is, by far, the quietest character. She has the fewest lines of dialogue out of any character, and if you specifically kept track, you'd probably find that she has the least amount of screen time. Allison is not very present in the film. She reveals the least about herself. As the troubled home lives of all the kids are revealed over the course of the film, we hear speeches, long-winded confessions of how they really feel about their parents and the ways they are treated by them. Yet, Allison's big spiel isn't so much a spiel at all, just 3 simple words.
What did they do to you?
They ignore me.
Yeah.
It's easy to miss just how Allison is abused by her parents. As I said, a case like Bender's is easy to diagnose as abusive, but Allison's not so much. She is not beaten, as far as we learn. She doesn't mention being screamed at. Nobody violated her physically, yet she's sad. Admittedly, it takes some real looking to spot the trouble with Allison's home life. It's not obvious, but once you see it, it becomes obvious why she's so self-kept and so shy.
Hey! What's her name? Wake her up. Hey! Come on your feet, Missy, let's go.
Little to nothing is given to the audience in regards to Allison's home life. The quick and informative intro sequence wherein all the students arrive at the school entrance clues us into how Allison's parents treat her. A car pulls up with tinted windows, from which Allison steps out with her bag. We can't see the person driving the car, but we can assume it's one of her parents. Once she's out of the car, the vehicle roars off without a goodbye or a love you, which Allison seems to anticipate as she lingers by the car for a few moments. When the car leaves without any pleasantries, she appears disappointed, but not surprised, and she shuffles towards the school. Allison is obviously invisible to her parents. This is not only proven by the manner in which they drop her off silently at the start of the film, but also in her behavior around the other kids. When everybody enters the detention room, Allison willfully separates herself from the group, choosing the seat furthest away from everyone else. What's more, she turns her entire body such that she's faced towards the wall and away from the others. She clutches her bag like it's the only friend in the room, because she can't imagine that other people can be friends. She doesn't treat herself as a person just like other people, but a small, unseeable thing that is inconvenient to the universe. It is her instinct to choose isolation, as if people naturally don't want her too close to them. People will obviously be happier if she is not around. If somebody is angry, it is because she is too present, because she hasn't made herself small enough. So her immediate reaction to anger is to shrink herself even more, hoping that disappearing will fix the issue.
Who closed that door?
I think a screw fell out of it. It just closed, sir.
Who?
This is one behavior Allison exhibits as a result of neglect by her parents. A lack of parental love has made her believe that she isn't meant to exist, but to float conveniently around others, never realizing into a full person. Identity is grounded in childhood experience. Most importantly, by a child's bond with their parents. Our intuitive view of ourselves is formed by our childhoods. It's not that confidence can't be cultivated later in life, but surely it comes much more naturally to people who were noticed and encouraged by their parents as children. Allison does not exude confidence, but shame and self-isolation. Her parents treat her like nothing at all, so she shrinks and hides herself in alignment with their treatment. But Allison is not only small and shy all the time. In fact, she exhibits a whole other behavior altogether, one that is quite the opposite of shy, in fact. As the film goes on, rather than hide herself, she actively works to make herself seen. Between eye-raising behavior and troubling comments, Allison whips out a few different tactics for pulling in attention from the other kids. Throughout the film, Allison is often seeking attention which she isn't getting at home. When she dumps the contents of her purse out onto the table in front of the others, informing them that she wants to run away, she's making a scene to earn sympathy or worry. When she doesn't get sympathy, but rather light mockery and minimizing, she angrily gets up and storms off. Her attention-seeking strategy has failed. When Andrew goes after her and asks what's wrong, she lashes out at him and tells him to go away. She's gotten the attention she wants, yet doesn't capitalize on it whatsoever. Andrew was willing to listen and lend her his heart, but she hisses and chases him off. This is an interesting detail because it highlights how neglected children at once desire the attention they aren't getting and refuse it when it's finally offered. It seems like a very odd contradiction, but psychologically it makes perfect sense. It's part of the natural bitterness and resentment that they feel for not being treated as inherently worthy. They hate having to be an obvious pain in order to be seen. Sure, a neglected child can make a big scene, raise concern in the parents, and farm sympathy from them artificially, but even when that tactic works, it's not fully satisfactory. Does the child really want to have to perform and act out for love, attention, and sympathy? Does it feel nice having to squeeze the attention out of the parents when they could and should just get it for free? There's an understandable resentment in having to make spectacles in order to be seen, because what the child really wants isn't just attention, but to feel valued inherently, to feel seen even when they aren't trying to be. In a healthy family, parents should care about their children whether or not something is wrong. But neglected kids, such as Allison, learn to make scenes and spectacles to get attention. By being constantly ignored by her parents, she has learned that being average, being okay, just being herself is not good enough. There has to be a problem. Something has to be wrong. Neglectful parents are often the kind to only and exclusively put out fires, so of course, neglected children will learn to create fires.
I stole your wallet.
Allison is one big walking fire. She wears black makeup, hangs her dark hair over her forehead, almost over her eyes. She instinctively picks the seat furthest from everyone else. She eats extremely unhealthy food loaded with sugar. Allison's sugar-infested lunch could be a call for help, the term for self-destructive behavior with the unconscious purpose of drawing worry and concern from other people. A later example of this is when Allison lies to Claire about having sex with her therapist, yet another instance of fabricating a problem in order to raise concern in other people. Allison is starting fires that she hopes other people will rush to put out.
Vodka. When do you drink vodka?
Whenever.
A lot?
Tons.
But Allison's healing journey begins once she realizes that being herself is enough, and she doesn't have to create fires in order to be seen. In fact, in turning herself into a walking cry for help, Allison makes herself undesirable, odd, and unapproachable, which only proves her parents right. Allison, because she has been ignored by her parents, has learned that she doesn't deserve attention. Through their indifference towards her, they have taught her this lesson, and it's what she believes. Admitting that her parents are wrong would be incredibly painful. It means that the people who birthed and raised her don't care about her, and don't love her even though she is beautiful and interesting. And so, in order to prove that her parents are right about her, which is less painful than the truth of their evil, Allison makes herself look strange on purpose. Her emo look is a turn-off for the other kids. They write her off as weird and unapproachable from the get-go, which is a success for her because it proves a worldwide consistency. If everyone else in the world ignores her just the way her parents do, then that means the issue is not in how her parents raised her, but rather the issue is her. They are not cruel and neglectful, she is just unlovable. She can bear the blame of being weird, unapproachable, off-putting. The reason people don't pay her any mind is that she isn't worth paying any mind to. Making herself the scapegoat is much, much easier than looking at her parents and realizing that they neglected her and thus abused her. Through the character Allison, the film explores how a child deprived of parental love will, at some times, desperately work for attention, and at others, intentionally alienate themselves from the rest of the world just to prove their parents right. It's a sad and confusing back and forth between wanting to be seen more than anything and intentionally making herself unseeable. This self-erasing tendency comes from a childhood of constantly wanting and yet never receiving. Under these tantalizing circumstances, when parents are around but not offering attention, the mind swings violently the way it does when the body is starving and not getting food. Hunger comes, peaks, and then vanishes, only to return in fuller force later. You can pinpoint moments when Allison is itching to get in on the rest of the group's action, and moments when she keeps herself separated. It's as if she's consumed with hunger that she doesn't know how to satisfy, because the people who could help her most in that regard let her starve. Allison hungers for love and attention, and if it's not coming from home, then she still has to get it from somewhere. Claire, the only other girl in the group, helps give Allison a makeover, thus showing some compassion and care that Allison isn't used to. Allison even asks,
Why are you being so nice to me?
as if an act of love is like a foreign language that doesn't make sense to her. But the makeover puts Allison in a position to feel better about herself, with a new look that allows her natural beauty to shine rather than hide underneath dark layers. She becomes more approachable, even arousing attraction from Andrew.
I can see your face.
Is that good or bad?
You don't have to be in pain to be seen. In fact, healthy people would rather look at you when you're happy and doing well for yourself. Allison has to learn this. Her parents don't notice her for being pretty, so she doesn't inherently value beauty. Rather than be bubbly and personable, she's always hurting herself, hoping for someone else to notice. Her tactic, learned from home, is to raise alarms in other people rather than inspire their affection. But Andrew's reaction to her makeover informs Allison that while her parents would rather see her suffer, the world at large wants her to be beautiful. As I said, there are many ways to hurt a child. The Breakfast Club includes an obvious example of an abused child in the character Bender, a child who is mocked, humiliated, put down, and outright beaten and burned. But there are less obvious examples of abuse, and the Breakfast Club does its part in spreading awareness of that fact. Through the character Allison, the film makes a bold statement, one that directly contradicts society's long-standing definition of child abuse. Most people use the word abuse very sparingly, only in very, very specific and explicit circumstances. In short, if it leaves scars, then it's abuse. But the truth is, you don't need to lay a finger on a child in order to harm them. In fact, the very act of not paying any attention to a child, not touching them, not looking at them, not speaking with them, does just as much, if not more, harm as beating them. Allison is proof of this. True, she doesn't have scars to present to the court, so long as she's getting fed, has clothes to wear and a roof over her head, then it's unlikely a judge would charge her parents with abuse, and Child Protective Services probably wouldn't feel the need to intervene. But she is being starved. Not starved of food, but attention and emotional sustenance. And just as malnutrition can show through a child's thin and unmuscular body, emotional neglect has clear and obvious signs. Allison's way of interacting with the world is the proof of her emotional malnutrition. She is self-kept, unhealthily shy, and cannot engage with others normally. She wears black clothes, black makeup, hangs her hair such that it conceals her face. She treats herself like somebody not worthy of being seen because her parents have refused to see her. On the outside, this should seem troubling, yet society would not typically see issue with this. Certainly not in the way that we'd worry over a bone-thin child because of his glaring malnutrition. In fact, the initial reaction of the other kids in the Breakfast Club is to giggle when Allison enters the library in her odd and self-erasing way. Would you laugh at a child who was underfed and 20 pounds underweight? Of course not. But emotional neglect and all of its obvious warning signs are not treated so seriously by society. In fact, it's funny. But The Breakfast Club was, as far as I can tell, one of the only films among the successful 1980s coming-of-age stories to accurately portray the negative effects of neglect. It was bold in its declaration that ignoring a child could hurt them in the same way beatings could. Surely I haven't seen many, if any, other movies from this era really tackle that subject. And while this film makes a very clear case that neglected children are themselves racked with a host of problems, it's not without a solution. Allison's reintegration into the world is a cure for her shyness. Through Claire's kindness and the ensuing change in her appearance, Allison learns that she is inherently worth something, and that she doesn't need to conceal herself as though she's undesirable. Being ignored by her parents has led her to believe that she's inherently unlovable and unwanted, but once she collects proof to the contrary from the rest of the kids, then she can override her parents' evaluation of her. If Andrew thinks she's attractive when her full face is on display, then clearly there's not something wrong with her face inherently. In fact, she's beautiful, meaning her parents were actually ignoring something precious when they ignored her. The way that I wanted to end this video was just to talk about self-worth, that it's very, very hard to treat yourself better than your parents treated you. It takes work, it takes effort, and that's a struggle that The Breakfast Club doesn't really go into much at all. It has the makeover sequence. It shows Allison becoming a brighter, happier, better version of herself through the loving kindness of Claire. But neglected children have a whole battle, a war ahead of them, internally. They have to undo the damage their parents did. They have to learn to speak to themselves differently than their parents spoke to them. Or that's the funny thing, is oftentimes your parents don't speak to you at all, or hardly at all. So your inner voice is the culmination of all these implications. The implication that you're not worthy, that you're boring, that you're just not an interesting kid, you're not someone they love, you're not someone who's worth time and attention or speaking to. And so it's really hard to learn how to love yourself. And I have to break away from the film for a minute because it doesn't go into this, but self-love comes when you stop believing what your parents told you, either explicitly or implicitly through ignoring you. My parents told me I wasn't worth anything. They didn't ask my opinions, they did not cherish my voice and my person. My parents were people who taught me through their actions to erase myself, and that's difficult to undo. I don't value my voice inherently, and that's really sad. And so I find that making these videos, coming to the microphone, writing, just speaking my mind, it's a great way to retrain myself into valuing my own voice once again, to reclaiming the parts of me that were lost along the way. And so there's no easy way of curing this stuff, and I think The Breakfast Club does make it look a little too easy. Just, oh, have a nice friend who makes you feel confident about yourself, and then get a boyfriend, and the end. And look, I love the themes that the movie has, and I like that it approaches neglect in a way that no other film from that era ever did. But it's a little too easy, the way that it wraps itself up, and I'm just here to tell you that I'm living proof that it's a lot harder than that, and it's not all a cakewalk like this. You don't just get nice friends who make everything easier for you. You have to put in a lot of work yourself. You have to learn to train your own inner voice. Your inner voice cannot be replaced by anyone else's. Your closest friends and confidants, people who you trust, the people who you spend the most time with and feel the most comfortable with, no matter how good you feel around them, no matter how comfortable you feel with them, they can never be a true replacement for your parents. The only person who can really replace what your parents never gave you is you. You have to be that new inner voice. You have to replace the voice of your parents with your own voice. And you do that through listening to yourself and not making yourself shut up and not ignoring yourself, not neglecting yourself. You break the cycle by treating yourself better than your parents treated you. Don't hurt yourself. It's really easy to always hurt yourself thinking that someone's going to come in and swoop in and save you. And that's your unmet desires to have your parents come into your life. And so you're always hurting yourself because your subconscious thinks that your parents are still there to come save you. But the truth is that they won't come save you. In all likelihood, my parents never did. And so I had to learn to save myself. I had to learn to be there for myself in the ways my parents never were. At a certain point, you take the responsibility to pick yourself up, to treat yourself better, and to self-parent, to be the better parent to yourself that your parents never were. And I don't think I can put it any better than that, so I think I'll leave it there. And so thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this, please consider going to patreon.com/OrionTrips to get access to new videos before they go out on YouTube. If you enjoy what I do, please consider supporting me there. I would deeply and humbly appreciate it. Or just comment, like, and subscribe. So thank you for watching. I'll see you guys in the next video, and take care of yourself, God bless, and peace out.